Greetings and welcome to Sports 101, a social, economic, and political look at sports from around the globe to Village Road. Today, our show topic is called No Place Like Home, Black Professional Athletes in HBCU Sports. This topic directly correlates to what's going on or trending in the sports community now. For anyone that's been living under a rock, Deion Sanders has just been named the head coach of Jackson State University. Jackson State University is a historically Black college university who compete in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. The Southwestern Athletic Conference, along with the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, are the two Division I conferences that support Black college sports. This move is monumental on many reasons. The main one being it starts a cultural shift back home, per se, or where these athletes were only allowed to play up until the 1970s. I'd like to read something for you. From 1968 through 1976, just after the NFL and AFL merged, remember the NFL and AFL merged in 1970 to become the NFC and AFC, between 53 and 70 players from historically Black colleges and universities were taken each year in the NFL draft. Again, between 53 and 70 players from historically Black colleges and universities were taken every year in the NFL draft, not just 1 year, every year. However, in the previous 20 years, there's only been 70 HBCU players taken total. So you go from an average about 64, 66 per se every year till 70 in 20 years. You can see the disparity. Why did that happen? Partly due to assimilation or integration, as other people may call it. When sports was integrated, most notably after Sam Cunningham and his USC team went to Alabama and just beat the brakes off of Bear Bryant, you start to see more colleges get Black players. A lot of these Black players from the past that went to the NFL, regardless if they wish the HBC or not, actually did come back and coach before Deion. To name a few of those players, we have Earl Holmes, who was a head coach at Florida A&M, Doug Williams, who was the head coach of his alma mater, Grambling State, Stump Mitchell at Southern University, Tyrone Wheatley, who was currently the head coach at Morgan State University. Alvin Harper was an assistant head coach and offensive coordinator at Howard. I worked under him and learned a lot of great things. Appreciate that, Hop. One of my former coaches from Mississippi Valley State, Sam Washington, who has a Super Bowl ring, is now the current head coach of North Carolina A&T State University. Monty Coleman had a coaching stint at Arkansas Pine Bluff. Ben Coates at Livingstone College, his alma mater. Obviously Deion Sanders at Jackson State, and Sean Gilbert, who is my current head coach at Livingstone College, who also come on tonight and share some things about his story, as well as what it takes to build a program. Now let's go to this cultural shift back to HBCU sports. Remember, the numbers that we just talked about in the past 20 years has only been 70 players taken, but in the 60s all the way up until, let's say, the late 70s, early 80s, it was about 60 a year. So what happened? Before 1950, there was almost no Black players in the NFL. But what happened is the NFL used a term called stacking, and that's a sport management concept where you get similar people at the same position, and that's only where you play them at. So if you see a team and an African-American young man playing, most people assume he's a running back or wide receiver or defensive back. Those are some common examples of the term stacking. However, in the 1950s and 60s, the NFL stacked that running back. There was a popular connotation at the time that Black athletes could not retain the cognitive abilities to play certain positions. They only can do striking things and reaction things. They couldn't think or process information, which led to the stigma of the black quarterback for so long. So in the 1950s, these running backs like Joe Perry, John Henry Johnson, Jim Brown, and Lenny Moore helped change the league's view to black players. Obviously, at other positions, it took more time, and it's still taking time today, notably at the quarterback position. But in the 1950s, it was super, super slow. When Baltimore won the title in 1958 and 59, four of their best players were black. But again, they were put in certain positions known as reactionary and not thinking positions. All right. All in all, the league will follow suit, and most teams avoided black players for the next 13 years. The NFL became much more involved with HBCUs is due to the AFL and competition. There was always startup leagues to try to compete with the NFL. However, when the AFL came about in the 1960s, they had a large competition with the NFL in regards to salaries. They will offer larger salaries sometimes in the NFL. Remember, television is just getting underway. A lot of teams are generating their revenue now from licensing and ticket sales and concessions. There wasn't the big TV market that it is today. So the AFL's presence obviously drove up prices. Other thing the AFL did was they had a forward-thinking approach into a style of play. If you ever watch old NFL films, segments, you'll see the Lombardi segment that it's a seal here and a seal here, and you run up the alley. The NFL was known for its, down, kick out style of play, where the AFL used a more open style of play. The forward pass was just becoming in vogue in the 50s and 60s. A lot of people were still running the option. So what the AFL was using became very prevalent, and it challenged the NFL's defenses. The NFL will have larger linebackers that could play the run but couldn't play the pass. So the AFL had a leg up on them.
So Jamar, so what was the reason? I mean, other than like obviously there was a discrepancy in maybe some strength and speed and certain athletic ability amongst African American players and other players that were already in the league. Was that why they started, like scouts and teams started going and venturing out to HBCUs to bring in, like, was it supposed to be a means to gain an advantage, or was there just like, all right, we're just going to go ahead and bring in black players because people say we have to?
No, it was competitive advantage, geography, and culture. If you look back into college, even outside of football, a lot of times athletes at that time, if they were on the East Coast, they didn't go to college. They went to either the Midwest or the West Coast, which was more socially tolerant of African Americans at this time. If you look at John Wooden's teams, he is classified as a great coach. He is a good coach, but he had talent from everywhere. You had Al Cindor or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from New York. He had people from everywhere. So the AFL, with their location of their franchises, as well as the competition and their style of play, they had to get people to fit that style of play. Example of this would be the mid 1980s, late 1980s, early 90s San Francisco 49ers. They had a head coach by the name of Bill Walsh. And Bill Walsh, if you ever read his book, it's a great book. It's about $400. But in the book, he says where he got his offense from. And he specifically states that he got his run game from Paul Brown and the Cleveland Browns, and he got his passing game from Archie Gunslinger Cooley, who was the head coach at Mississippi Valley State, who coached Jerry Rice.
So did he merge? So did he end up merging those philosophies? So he went ahead and took, like, let's say he took running plays and turned them into play action plays.
Well, he took the plays and just named it the West Coast offense. Okay. So with a heavy running style and then a quick passing style, the West Coast offense pretty much, remember linebackers were very big at the time. So if I could put a receiver at the slot and run a route on a linebacker, I have a competitive advantage. And that's basically what the West Coast did. It was timing routes, getting the ball to the back real quick, and letting your athletes work in space. This wasn't used in the NFC or NFL, which later became the NFC due to their style of play, which were known for a power game. They would feature their quarterbacks and running backs. The quarterbacks usually would throw the ball typically on third downs, or if they needed to pass because the forward pass wasn't in vogue then. And the running backs were the glory boys of the team. They got all the advertisements, such as like Frank Gifford when he played for the Giants. Just running backs to get 30, 40 carries a game, and that's the way the game was played at that time.
Right, and it's just weird because it's like, you would think that a guy like Bill Walsh, like, you think it'd be more complicated than just I just took this and made that. You know what I'm saying? Like just because of the way his offense, how successful that offense was and still is in a sense.
Well, not only did he do that, but he followed up with he brought Archie Glensinger's Cooley, best receiver, Jerry Rice, to San Francisco. And then he went to Delaware State, another historically black college, and got another receiver. And in his book, he actually states that John Taylor was better than Jerry Rice. John Taylor would run the top off the defense and take 3 defenders with him, and Jerry Rice would be man on man again with a box linebacker who's used to playing the run.
Spanking him. Yeah.
He would catch it and turn up, and there's no one there because everyone ran with John Taylor.
So this whole time Jerry Rice is covered by John Taylor. I mean, like, and he also it makes somewhat sense because then he got covered for a short time by a guy. I mean, maybe not covered, but he had T.O. He had T.O. for a short time at the tail end of the San Francisco era.
That's true.
And then he had Tim Brown in Oakland. You know what I'm saying? So he always had to have another name. Like, I mean, even though John Taylor isn't that big of a name now, I mean, it in history is as big as Jerry Rice, but Taylor made Jerry Rice in a sense.
Exactly. The other thing that happened in all this confusion going on with, it's so many more teams. So like the NBA now, people are saying it's watered down or we don't want any more Major League Baseball teams, but there was a clamoring for talent at this time. Remember, it's still lightly segregated. So there's a large portion that's not getting to play. So the NFL started to go out and recruit more. So they went to actually Mississippi Valley looking for someone else and found Deacon Jones in the 60s. So that was another thing that all these NFL teams start doing. There actually was a bidding war with the AFL and NFL in the 1960s. I don't know if anyone's a football historian, but Super Bowl III, which, Joe Namath, again, Pittsburgh native, actually from the same neighborhood or township as Coach Gilbert. He was the quarterback of the Jets, and he predicted the win the day before. But what happened in that game was they were throwing the ball around. A lot of the AFL teams, since they threw the ball a lot, they had more black college players than the NFL teams, so they would beat them. In Super Bowl IV, the same thing happened. The Chiefs played the Vikings, and they were a 12-point underdog because, again, the NFL was, big brother at the time. So the NFL is the Lakers, and the AFL is the Clippers. And, the sports line had the Chiefs up, down 12 points. They had 8 starters from historically black colleges. The Vikings had none, and the Chiefs ended up winning the game. Again, due to style of play.
Wasn't that the Purple People Eaters? Wasn't that the Purple People Eater Vikings?
Yep.
And then and like you said, how big of just to put in perspective, how big of an underdog the Jets were. The Jets were not even supposed to be in the ball game. Like it was supposed to be Baltimore by whatever number you want to put over there to a very small number in the Jets in the Jets side.
And when you speak of Baltimore, again, due to the style of play, Unitas played so long because he was just handing the ball off, and he wasn't asked to do the things that the modern quarterback is asked to do, so he could extend his career. So it was just tough back then. If you look at the 1960s, they had 16 players drafted in a 10-year time frame from black colleges that are all Hall of Famers. 16. So that's in 10 years. That's pretty amazing. 10 of them came from the NFL, AFL. Willie Brown, Charlie Joyner, Ken Houston, Larry Little, Buck Buchanan, Art Shell, who was a former coach of the Raiders, Willie Lanier, Winston Hill, Evan Bethea, and Emmett Thomas. Emmett Thomas used to be he was a longtime defensive backs coach. His last job, I think, was with the Falcons. So just in that one decade, it's showing you, again, all the talent that you see right there, and you can't see everywhere else. So nowadays, everyone talks about the SEC, the Southeastern Conference. But when things were segregated, the best conference in the South was the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So Alabama wouldn't play Alabama A&M, or LSU wouldn't play Grambling. I was fortunate enough to start my coaching career at Grambling in 2005 under the Melvin Spears, and we won the SWAC championship and Black College National Championship that year. But it was historic just to know that you're at a place where they were ostracized from regular society, and they have more people in the NFL Hall of Fame than LSU. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't understand that. So again, this is deep, and it's rooted just like racism in society. So we got to peel back these layers, and Deion Sanders hiring and all the assistant coaches he does hire is going to be a start to, again, make this flow a little bit even. It would be foolish to think all black athletes would go back to black colleges, but even if a third or half went, the competition bar would shift, and I think it would be more competitive.
Right. Like part of me feels like it's almost like an art to go ahead and find, let alone at a HBCU, but like a talent at a smaller school anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's like when you see all these Hall of Famers at these schools, it's like, man, why weren't you looking there to start? You know what I mean? Why weren't you looking at it from the jump? Because like you just keep the talent just keeps pouring out. The names that you list off, and then putting Hall of Fame next to them. I mean, that says something. It's like where was your talent? Where were your eyes set on prior to? And even now, I think that you could find, like, you're still finding talent in smaller schools. So it's like, you know, to say, like, I know there's a thing now, especially like with basketball, that recruits are starting to look at HBCUs. And I'm like, that should always been like, that should always be for to even out the competitive advantage. I think, or the competitive discrepancy, especially in college football or college sports in general. It's like you got to have people venture out instead of going and being the third biggest name in Ohio State. Go ahead and make Grambling a household name, or you know what I'm saying, make Jackson State a household name, something like that. Like, you know, they're like, for me, I just feel like if more emphasis is put on coaching and recruiting to go ahead and look at these smaller schools, because you can find talent, even if the talent, even if nobody's talking about it, you'll still find talent. And I think it needs to be put into athletes' heads that you could go ahead and make a name for yourself better if you go ahead and take on a challenge of playing at a smaller school.
Exactly. In professional circles, that's always been the case. HBCUs have always been prominent. Again, since assimilation happened, the professional ranks have always known that the top talent was at HBCUs. Now that talent has been, led astray, and we'll talk about that in a later segment. But again, let's look at the 1975 NFL draft. 1975 NFL draft. Out of the top 10 picks, 1 through 10, 3 of them from historically black colleges, and 2 were from Jackson State. The number 4 pick in the 1975 NFL draft was Walter Payton. The number 6 pick was Robert Brazile, also known as Dr. Doom, a linebacker. And then the number 8 pick was Gary Johnson from Grambling State. There was a few more picks in that draft, but that was in the top 10. So we got to look at that. Now, going back to 1976, again, to show you that this is just relatively new, that the top athletes aren't playing at black colleges. In 1976, the number 10 pick was from Grambling. James Hunter, the number 34 pick, was from Texas Southern. 49 pick from Tennessee State. The 54th pick from Grambling, Sammy White, he made the Hall of Fame. He was a 1976 Rookie of the Year of all rookies. 78 draft, number 17 pick, Doug Williams from Grambling. Number 29 pick, Sylvester Hicks from Tennessee State. You had 71 from South Carolina State. Again, 77, another Grambling player, Carlos Honeywell. The 1970s, that was known for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 4 Super Bowls. What they did is they went through the Pittsburgh Courier and they hired a writer who became a scout who later morphed into a front office executive by the name of Bill Nunn. Bill Nunn was able to find Hall of Famers, just as super producer Ivan just stated. And again, that's Ivan, the super producer that's on me tonight. He produces everything. He makes homemade lemonade, great tacos. Ivan does it all. But in the 1970s, Bill Nunn was able to go to small schools and build a Hall of Fame defense and get John Stallworth from Alabama A&M, Mel Blount from Southern University, Donnie Shell from South Carolina State, and a host of other support players that did also play at black colleges. Now, Ivan just recently spoke of when did this change? And technically, all things changed in the end of 1979. What happened? Well, in 1978, if you ever watched the documentary The University of Miami hired Howard Schnellenberger as his head coach. In his first season at Miami, again, Miami was a BCS team, Division I, and they traveled to Tallahassee, Florida, which is northern Florida, to play a 1AA team, Florida A&M University. This is Howard Schnellenberger's first year, 1979. FAMU won that game 16-3. They played in front of like 45,000 fans in their own stadium on campus in 1979. They had a better game plan than Miami that day. They played 3 quarterbacks. They had one that can pass. They had one that was 6'4" that ran the option, and then another one that was like a dual threat that did a little bit of both. And again, this is 1979. So what happened after that? Howard Schnellenberger created the state of Miami, and all the black players in Florida that were going to FAMU end up going to Miami. Outside of 1979, FAMU was the only historically black college to win the FCS playoffs or FCS national championship in 1978. So they were a powerhouse. They had not only football players, but football players who were Olympic gold medalists that ran track. So they did a little bit of everything. And this is exactly when you start to see that paradigm shift from black colleges to predominantly white institutions. After this, there was. Go ahead, Ivan.
My bad, Jamar. Why did Schellenberg? I mean, what happened? What was the sale pitch to Miami after like knowing the fact that you went ahead and you beat this team? Mm-hmm. What was the sale pitch to go to Miami? Like, what was Miami offering?
Well, I think we all know part of the answer to that. So let's start with the above the table part. Howard Schnellenberger sold you could stay home. Remember Florida, if you ever drove to Florida, once you hit like Jacksonville, northern Florida, you still have about 8 hours till you get to Miami. So at this time, a lot of the black players from South Florida, and particularly Dade and Broward counties, were going to Tallahassee, which is up in the Panhandle, about 8 hours away to play football. So he sold again. Okay. Florida State wasn't that good either at the time. It was FAMU. This is 1978, 77, 78, 79. So a lot of the players were playing up there. Some did go to Florida State, but the team to beat was FAMU. Like I said, you had Bob Hayes winning gold medals and playing football, then going to play for the Cowboys. And they had a star-studded team. Again, they beat Miami, at their house. And Miami actually had to come back to make it close. So the selling pitch was to stay closer to home. And again, the pitch that African Americans have always fell for since we came to this country, that whatever we do in our culture is not good enough, and to achieve where you need to go, you got to come to Miami because our ice is colder, our air conditioning is better, etc. Once the athletes did get there, towards the later part of the regime of the U, like in the mid 80s, obviously, and it wasn't just Miami. It was probably all of college football at that time, but it was a lot of under the table things going on to keep those kids local. But the most prevalent thing was that the sale that Miami is a better option than FAMU.
Yeah, it's easy to sell a kid and his family, especially if they come in. And I'm sure a majority of them, not all, but I'm sure a majority of them were coming from a struggle. You know what I mean? And it's easy to sell somebody on hey, come to my school. We'll give you this. We'll give you this. We'll give you that. If you don't have it or you ain't never seen it before. So like part of me feels like, man, it's almost like it's almost like a great robbery.
Well, the caveat emptor with that is he was selling hot air, because you got to remember, FAMU just beat Miami. They went to the 1AA national championship and won that. They were the power to be in the state. So just like when integration happened, and we talked about baseball before, Jackie Robinson was like the 20th best player in Major League Baseball, but Negro League Baseball. But when he went to the major leagues, he was like the best player. And then you had players like Satchel Paige that are 45 and going to Major League Baseball throwing no hitters. So they're well past their prime. So again, just the notion that your culture is not the best, and a whole different paradigm of things, ranging from food to clothing to where you educate yourself, led athletes then and still to this day to institutions that obviously profit from them since the inception of television revenues.
Yeah, it's just like that, like you said, those '80s teams, and I actually wanted to get back to you to that Miami story, or to your, I guess I could say your lesson. But like it's funny because like those '80s teams and like throughout the '90s and then recently, I mean, we've always heard about recruiting. Of course, we heard about everybody knows about the death penalty in MSU or SMU. I'm sorry, SMU. But it's like there was teams out there. That they were poaching players, especially from HBCUs. And just like you said, they were beating your Division I teams. They're beating your powerhouse. Well, now your powerhouse teams, but they wouldn't have been a powerhouse if they didn't go ahead and pretty much ransack all the HBCUs for the players.
Exactly. Again, looking at the state of Louisiana, Grambling State, they have more Hall of Fame players than LSU or any other college in Louisiana. LSU would not play them in the 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s due to the team being bigger, stronger, and faster.
Hey, Jamar, we got Coach Gilbert on right now.
Okay.
I'll bring him on.
No problem. Thank you. I would like to introduce today's guest. He happens to be a mentor of mine, a friend, as well as my head coach. He has extenuous experience in the NFL. He's a 15-year vet, the number 3 pick in the 1992 NFL draft. Upon graduating or leaving his service with the NFL, he did some work with the Players Association. He's versed in contracts and negotiation. After that, he went into a brief high school stint, and fortunately, he was just awarded the head football coach at Livingstone College. So I would like to bring on another Hall of Fame professional who would like to share his experiences about life and building a historically black college program. Sports 101, please welcome Sean Gilbert. Hey, Coach, how you doing this evening?
What's going on, brother? Hey, I appreciate the introduction, man. I got to hire you, man, for every one event I go to.
Hey, you build my throne, I'll build yours.
Hey, you know how we do.
All right. So, Coach, if you could just let the guests know, this show is based out of Chicago, but we're going global. If you could just let them know a little bit about yourself, brief history, your Western PA stories, Pitt tenure, and then talk about some of your experiences in the NFL.
Well, I mean, I think you kind of summed it up. I played for a number of years in the league, and that opportunity has awarded me these opportunities where I've become the head coach at Livingstone College. And this is a great opportunity for what I've been working on over the past 8 years since I retired. And that's mentoring and trying to help young men find their purpose in life. And as you know, Coach, we're putting together a lot of information so that we can empower these young men so that they would have some direction once they're done with college and they decide to go on and live, their life's dream. And we promote football as a tool and not necessarily as your end result. And but it's an opportunity for you to learn about yourself and use that to empower yourself so that you can find your place out here in the work world.
Exactly, Coach. Everyone talks about Black college, and you hear it on the social media, print, and news all the time about the limitations that Black colleges have. I would like to focus on the positive. Could you tell us some of the positive things that you saw and that you can grow and cultivate since becoming the head coach at Livingstone College?
Well, I think that, I think that the narrative has to change and we have to talk about the positive things, Coach. I think that it's important that we point out the histories of what we've accomplished throughout the decades. And since, Livingstone is where HBCU football started. And I think more people need to know about the history of Livingstone College as well as other, HBCU schools. I know growing up north, the HBCU schools were never mentioned to me in terms of opportunities to go to school. And though I was recruited by every school in the country, I still probably would have taken interest, especially if you had known the history of the amount of players that they put in the NFL and knowing that's a path that you can take that's an alternative, for you in terms of having your dreams come true if that's your aspirations. So I think focusing on what HBCUs are doing in a positive way, I think those are the things that can be building blocks for us in terms of when we say build your own throne, that are good foundations for what it is you're trying to get accomplished and be a part of change in a positive way. And those are the things that we bring to the table in terms of trying to impact and help these young men accomplish their goals.
Exactly. So speaking of getting NFL caliber athletes that can compete one day for an NFL position, could you tell the listening audience about some things you're doing to sell Livingstone and your vision and build your own throne per se?
Well, I think like in anything, in my world, I've come from an impoverished world with so many people have, and I've just sought opportunity after opportunity and use no in terms of when people reject you as a learning process on terms of how you can do things better. So what we bring into the table in terms of NFL experience, college experience, all of those things are cultivated into what we do in terms of our brand, and that's when we're recruiting players, we don't sell them on anything. We tell them really what we could potentially do for them and opportunities that we can create for them if they make a commitment to us. Nothing happens until the individual decides that he's going to take control of his life. And that's the beginning part of build your own throne. You have to be accountable to yourself. You have to understand where you come from and be accountable for the things that are positive and negative in your life. And then we have to begin to build the foundation from that. Understanding you might have a kid that has ADHD problems and you don't know why he's going through certain things, but you have to break that down so that you can explain to him and help him understand, the opportunity that you provide with him in terms of giving him the services that he'll need, what your college offers him in terms of whatever it is he's going through, so that it can help him excel. So what we provide is an opportunity to mentor and help these young men see what their potentials are in life. And for those that gravitate to that, we build our program and we build our throne.
Thank you, Coach. As a young man who's deciding between colleges and having an offer from a historically Black college and a predominantly white institution, what would you tell that young man if he's torn between deciding where to go to school, not only build his football career, but as you said, build his life?
Well, what I would explain to him is this: one, In terms of amenities, depending on what school you are, you can't compete with those amenities depending on what's there. If a PWI has all of the things that you're looking for in terms of eye candy, that's hard to compete with no matter what you tell a young man. You have to provide him with services that he needs, and he has to see that his opportunity lies within the information that you're sharing with him. And from there, you empower him, empower his parents to help have a better understanding of where they're going to allow their child to come and grow. And so we just try to be as transparent as we can. We provide culinary here at our school. We provide hotel hospitality at our school, as well as the criminal justice system. Our sports management programs are great. So we try and cater to whatever it is that student athlete is his aspirations are. And if we can accommodate those things, we do. If we don't, then we'll gladly help you, try to make a decision for what school is best for you. We try to keep color out of the factor and let him see what schools offer him, and is this the best opportunity for him? Is this the environment that fits what he wants to do going to college and what he wants to accomplish?
Thank you. Now, using those same things that you just referenced, could you talk about how it worked in your first recruiting class?
Well, one, we were dealing with a lot of COVID things, and especially dealing with and that just is a storm that's unexpected. So we were behind the eight ball. One, when I got hired in February, we're already in the middle of, and most schools were in closing on recruiting, and we were still caught in the middle of that storm. But with having great coaches, who didn't blink, and that's between you, Coach Williams, Coach Austin, Coach Jordan, Coach Jermaine. I mean, grabbed the bull by the horns and said, "Hey, listen, there's players out here, and we're gonna find the ones that fit the program that we're trying to build." And you guys took that challenge, and you went out. We went to Georgia, found you know uh, Division I players that have been overlooked, and we try to take that whole division thing out of the way, and we try to recruit a player based on his ability and his talents. We're not looking at Division I or Division II. We look at a player, and if he fits what we're trying to do, we pursue him. If Alabama's pursuing him and we're pursuing him, we feel that we have just as much opportunity to provide him in terms of growing as a young man and having success in life.
Thank you. Against Chicago, as Coach Gilbert just said, Livingstone College did play the first historically black college football game in the United States in, I believe, 1892 against Johnson C. Smith University in Salisbury, North Carolina. So that's historic in itself. Chicago, Coach Gilbert is always looking for a few good men. If you could tell Chicago right now and our listening audience, Coach Gilbert, about your vision for Livingstone College football and how you would like to bring it to the levels that you would like to bring it to, and how any young men in Chicago that are listening can help you build your vision.
Well, I would tell anybody in Chicago, listen, we're down here in Salisbury, North Carolina, at Livingstone College, and we're looking for young men that are interested in making a name for themselves. First generation young men who have an aspiration and ambition to make their name known out here in these streets the right way, and put your name in a place where you can be proud of it. Livingstone College is the place for you. We embrace everybody that's coming. We want you to have an opportunity to be successful in life. And if you think that this is an opportunity to come to a historically black college and make an impact and let everybody back home know what you're doing, Livingstone College is the place for you.
Now, everyone is talking about Deion Sanders' supposed staff with their 84 years of professional experience. Could you give the listening audience some insight on your staff and the professionalism that you have there, not only with your NFL coaches, but your college coaches and your life coaches as well?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to Deion and Coach Sanders and the great opportunity he's been given down at Jackson State, and all of his coaches that he brought on to give opportunities. I think that it speaks to the need of former players to have opportunities to come out here and express what they learned in the game and how it can impact these young men. I don't think that there's any great opportunity than to have for those guys to have that success and be able to come back and pour it um, into those players. And our coaching staff consists of a lot of former players too. It's not something that we PR because we're more interested in how they're going to impact the players. But I think it goes to show a lot of what the potential could be. And I like to, I support everything that they're doing. And should it be great if we can get a game with them? Having two first time head coaches at HBCU, and also, that played in the league and got years of experience. We got probably about 5 or 6 retired coaches on our staff: Ted Washington, Reuben Brown, Andrew Jordan, Jermaine Smith, um, uh,
D Brown.
D Brown, Coach Lott.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have a lot of guys with a lot of experience that played. So, and we're proud of that. But what we're more proud of is what they've accomplished off the field in their endeavors. The NFL is a great accolade, but how you parlay that into, things going back into society. We got coaches that are teachers. That my coaches have master's degrees. My coaches are getting doctorates. So, these are the things that we use to inspire our young men, not to just look at an athlete for jumping and running, but look and use his brain, use your mind. We work on channeling displaced aggression so that guy can get his energy in the right place so that he can achieve those things and understand that everything doesn't happen instantly the way the streets provide for us. There's a process that we go through, and I think I have coaches that understand that and that gravitate to wanting to see these young men become successful in life.
Definitely. Can you tell the audience a little bit about some of the work you do in that area with your nonprofits, and particularly in regards to helping young men empower themselves to stay on the right path?
Yeah, I'm a part of a nonprofit called Community Leadership and Development, and what we do there is I partner with them to help bring in leaders, bring sponsorship to situations so that you can develop leaders, because that's one of the things we're lacking in our communities is young leaders or mature leaders that have their heads on right and can lead our young men in the right direction. So we do a lot of giving. We look for, and we still promote and get sponsorship. We look for greater support. We would love to come up into that area and do some foundation building and build some relationships. And those things can all parlay over to football or not. To get young man off the street and give him an opportunity to see that there's something else for him in life, I think we win every time we can snatch one.
I definitely agree, Coach Gilbert. Would you like to share any final thoughts with our listening audience before departing for the evening?
Hey, Jamar.
Yes, sir.
I had a question for Coach Gilbert. Hey, Coach Gilbert, I'm Ivan Burgess. What's up? How are you doing tonight?
What's going on, good brother?
I'm all right. I actually just wanted to really a meatball question. I just wanted to know what was your, if you can recall, what was your toughest game in the NFL?
Every last one of them. If you ask Coach, you see me walk, he'll tell you. Every last one. 18 surgeries, a lot of pain. I mean, every game's competition. These are the best athletes in the world that you're playing against week in and week out. You respect every one of them as your opponent. At the same time, you look to try to break their will. And that's the enthusiasm of the competition.
Mm-hmm.
So I give my hats off to every guy that I played against. He made me better one way or another.
Right. All right. Right on. That was a great answer. Great answer, Coach. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much, Coach Gilbert. Against Chicago, Livingstone College is coming. Believe that. Coach Gilbert, thank you so much. Again, we're working to build your vision, your foundation at Livingstone College. We thank you for empowering us and employing us to do so. And again, any last words before you part? We would love to have them.
The only thing I say is, what's your name? Build your own throne.
And we're built. Go Blue Bears. I sounded like Emmanuel. All right, again, SportsZone Chicago. That is Coach Sean Gilbert right there, blessing us with a little insight and wisdom in regards to his experiences. Ivan, any thoughts in regards to what Coach was talking about and the holistic perspective?
I was just listening to the names. It's like, wow, you got people down there that are putting in some work, and people that coming from around the league that are putting in work. And I think that's an awesome thing, especially in with a with something that once was, you know what I mean, in places that once were something, to rebuild that, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Definitely. Again, Coach Gilbert was very modest. So the other co-offensive coordinator with myself, Andrew Jordan, he played like 12 years in the NFL. He was a tight end for the Vikings when they had Chris Carter and Randy Moss. Ted Washington, is a known name. Reuben Brown, Pitt legend, who I patterned my game off. I used to walk up the hill to see them play. When I was a little kid, I actually wore number 78.
Oh, trust me, I love watching Reuben Brown when he was playing.
Yeah.
I love watching.
He 164 games played, 164 games started. So we're trying to do something too. It's just sad that again, a lot of people don't recognize these efforts, and it takes someone like Deion Sanders to bring light to a situation that was the only beacon 30 years ago.
Yeah, and it's I guess it's not upsetting because you're always happy that it happened. But part of me is like, why did it take this long? Why does it take special circumstances to want to go after something like that? Go after building the mountain. Try to build the mountain. You know what I'm saying? Instead of just going and adding on to it. It's just, I mean, to me, it sucks because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that had, a lot of players, a lot of coaches that have gone by the wayside because they didn't have the opportunity. No, the opportunity didn't present itself, or there was no attention drawn to them.
Well, again, you got to look at the economics of sport, in particular television contracts. So if we look at like I said, if you can watch that FAMU Miami game on YouTube in 1979. ESPN has just started in 1979, so there's little posters taped to the fence that say ESPN. No one knew what that was. Sport didn't think that television revenues could work, because the predominant feeling was if we put it on TV, no one would come to the home games. But then they developed the blackout policy, where if so many people don't go to the home game, it's blacked out in the local market. So they're able to do things to recruit money and make it on both ends. But the main thing that destroyed the historically black colleges was that we found this gold mine of talent. Let's build up our facilities so they'll want to come here, because, as Coach Gilbert stated, the main thing you hear everywhere the football field is 100 yards, every 45-pound weight is 45 pounds, regardless of what school you at. It's just the icing around everything, the candy that makes people entices them. So,
and I think also it's my whole thing is my thing is the leadership. So like if you don't have, you can have the work ethic as well. I mean, and you could be all about working uphill and getting over and overcoming, but it's nothing like having somebody in your corner,
exactly.
Somebody that you could trust while you're doing that, because as hard as that, as much as you might want it, and as hard as that, as hard as big as the mountain may be, if you got a coach or you got a mentor, you got somebody that's just there just to give you that extra, it makes it a whole lot easier, and you become a different player, I think.
Well, I agree with you too, Ivan. But again, you asked earlier about why would you go to Miami if FAMU's been kicking their butt for so long.
Right.
If you don't believe what you have and your culture is great, or you haven't been taught that, again, living in the United States, you're not taught that, and your culture is not revered in any forum, then you're going to think other things are better. If this same thing happened to BYU, it would close. If Mormons decided that we didn't want to go there, and we'll go somewhere else. If Notre Dame, the Catholics, didn't want to go there. Boston College is a Protestant institution. There's so many institutions that would shut down if their main demographic chose not to go. Well, historically black colleges, what happened is the main demographic left in regards to sports talent, but yet they're still open because there's enough people to populate them. But the top athletes, again, the SEC was not good. They refused to play Grambling or any of those teams until after assimilation or integration. So that lets you know right there, that they knew what was going on, but once we do this, now let's take all the talent, and now they're left. And now 30 years later, these schools are looked at as desolate.
Right.
And really, they were the Mecca.
Mm-hmm. That was the Mecca. That's perfect. That's a perfect way to say it. And it's like I said, I'm an underdog guy, so I love seeing some type of a paradigm shift, especially in sports. So you know what I'm saying? Like it's to me, I like to see that. Why not HBCU making a national championship? Why not it being on ESPN? You know what I'm saying? Like things like that. Things like that I enjoy in sports.
Exactly. If you look at even basketball, with there's no HBCU that's won a national championship, but again, basketball enthusiasts say if I have a basketball team with 12 individuals and the 10 that play are all black, then it's an HBCU team. They made jokes about that, about the French World Cup team winning the World Cup, that it was an African team won it. So again, if you just look back to the small victories, a few years ago, Hampton made it to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament. There was a few victories here and there. North Carolina A&T 2 years ago beat East Carolina in football. Howard beat UNLV in football when Kalen Newton was their quarterback. He thus has transferred to Auburn and now is a number 3 wide receiver. But he was the starting quarterback for Howard, Offensive Player of the Year, 1AA player. He has so many accolades, but he left and went to Auburn to play receiver.
Right.
So again, that just shows you over and over again that until the mind believes that what you're doing and what your culture doing is not only successful for you, but it impacts you spiritually in a positive manner, and it reverberates around the community. HBCUs will not rise until that happens in the minds of a lot of people. It's all mental at this point.
I think the advertising, I think the branding and the advertising needs to be kicked up too. Okay. I think it needs to be thrown everywhere. It needs to be blasted across like ESPN and other websites, sports websites, just like all the other big colleges, all the other, you know what I'm saying? All that it even needs to be an even spread, because I'm getting thrown, big major Division I colleges that will never fail. You know what I'm saying? But other kids don't understand. And maybe there's a coach like a Coach Gilbert that'll change who the player I am. And all of a sudden, you went from a player who was only going to be this to a player who's now going to make a leap from a HBCU to an NFL roster.
Exactly, but to get to that, you have to sift through the public perception and all the naysayers saying, "Why would you go there? Why not go here?" But in regard to, let's say, non-historically black colleges, when Appalachian State went to Michigan and beat Michigan, Appalachian State moved from 1AA to BCS. But they're a predominantly white institution.
I remember watching that game. That was insane.
Yeah, they were a 1AA team at that time. But once they beat Michigan, it was hard to get games. So they took that money and revenues that they created from having television opportunities and were able to move up to a larger division to increase their payload. Because the more you move up, the more money you get. For example, when I was coaching at Howard, Under Armour had just started around that time, and they're based out of Maryland. So the contract that the University of Maryland had differed from what Howard had, and what the rep said is because they're on television. So they got more stuff. They got a different variants of items. We got stuff, but it wasn't on the same level. And we're both, playing, the same brand of football. So that goes to show you how there's so many forces in the play that it has to take like some athletes like Maku Maker, supposedly Mikey Williams, maybe even Bronny James. These guys that are going to decide that, I'm going to do this for myself and go to a historically black college. Because again, in basketball, everyone's Division I, so you play everyone. So it really doesn't matter where you go. You get in a tournament, you're in the tournament. So.
And that's what bothers me about that a little bit because I mean, you know, I do have a problem with like SEC teams like Alabama going ahead and playing like the Citadel in the middle of the year. I do have problems like that. But if you're gonna go ahead and schedule a beginning of the year game, now that's something different because now you could, you know, both teams are at their early stages of the year. You know what I mean? Like you don't know what you got. It's pretty much like a pure test. And if you end up blowing them out, you end up blowing them out. But if there's a slim chance that an Appalachian State can emerge, you know what I'm saying, from that, and it could change not only the team's life but the university's, like, you know, the university's path. I mean, that's something you gotta open up to because I like the open competition in the NCAA basketball as opposed to, like, you know, football.
Exactly, but again, you know, football that's rooted in old money, and number two, they don't want to shift that because right now they have the talk is about the BCS or the Power Five. They're actually saying Power Four conference now because the Pac-12 canceled their season for the fall. So the other BCS conferences are saying, well, kids are going to want to go to you. You just cancel for the fall. So it's a Power Four now that these 4 or 5 conferences are going to break off and just do. We can pay our players a salary. They can go to school if they want, but we're going to pay them a salary. We're not going to be NCAA. And we have all the television revenues. So they don't want that bubble to break. So by adding new teams or the paradigm shifting, as you said, back to if Grambling is competing for the top African-American talent with LSU in the state and they both have the same facilities, then why would you go to LSU?
Right.
So
they're selling you a name. They're selling you the brand. You know what I mean? Like they're selling you the brand. They're not necessarily selling you the substance that you need.
And with Howard Schnellenberger, all those players he got that would have went to FAMU that came to Miami, they started the U per se. And that never would have happened if they didn't hire him. And what if Miami beats FAMU in 79? He might not have this concept. But being a new coach, losing to a black college and a 1AA school, that's fireable material right there.
Oh, yeah, so it's beyond fireable.
So he had to do something outlandish to keep his job. So I recruit the state of Miami. I want to keep everyone that's from South Florida to go to Miami. I'll sell them a dream to get them to come here. They'll in turn take this private school and make it nationally known.
Right.
And African American kids get nothing from it.
Right. I mean, you offer, Scott, like I said, it's the offerings to when you offer something to somebody that has nothing, it's like that's like the world, man. Like, you know, you're offering the world. So it's like the eyes, everything's a yes, boom, we're going there because of you know, the promises. I feel like they robbed some of the culture in HBCUs. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. Again, Ivan, you hit it right on the spot. Culture was robbed. It's sad that it takes negative things when the community is not as nuclear focused. Again, if you compare the African American culture to other minority cultures in America, to Hispanic, Latina culture, Polynesian culture will be the two prevalent examples. The vast difference is due to number one, having an inner knowledge of self and culture and community. A lot of the things that happen in the African American community don't happen in the other two mentioned communities because they have a semblance of sticking together. The sports reference I would like to use with that is if you look at the Polynesian or Samoan culture, Brigham Young University, which is a Mormon institution, has monopolized the Samoan culture for a number of years. Yes. It then spread to Washington, Hawaii, and other schools on the West Coast. But they were the first ones to do it by going to American and Western Samoa, using Mormon missionaries to set up schools, get the children to convert from their indigenous religion to being Mormon, and then in turn getting large, fast, athletic football players to Utah that they never would have got. Exactly.
when I first started seeing Simone, because I being in the Navy, I was stationed in Washington, so I seen
Mhm.
like a huge Polynesian, community,
Mhm.
and like I was like, okay, I can understand that. You're on the Pacific, you're on the water, all the way up and down the coast.
Mhm.
But then you venture out to Nevada, you venture out to Utah, you venture out to like Montana, Wyoming, and you're seeing these giant Polynesians. Like, where the hell are you? Like, you're about 3,000 miles
Mhm.
away from from first of all your native home, but let's say you were born on the West Coast, you're still thousands of miles away from
Exactly.
the California coast or from the Oregon coast or wherever. It's like, man, like where they come up with all this?
Well, again, the key part of that was even though a lot of them did convert to be a Mormon or Christian, they never lost their culture. So
Mhm.
you always see them together. They wear their cultural garments to the NFL, whatever happens. They wear leis because that's their culture. Whereas if you look at the African American community, some things in the culture, well, don't do that, don't do this. Again, the pride is not there due to a lot of reasons. So, yep, Sean, USC has a lot of strong ties to Samoan athletes as well. So again,
Malu, they got a
yep,
bunch of Loa Tupu,
mhm,
there's a bunch of the list goes on.
yeah, yeah. But again, having that sense of culture still let them, I guess, convert some things, but then they didn't lose everything, which is the difference between the African American community, and it shows itself in the sports medium.
Definitely. I'm pretty much toast here, Jamal. I don't know if you want to wrap up or you want
Yeah,
to.
we definitely can wrap up. So final word for the day, fellas. Again, we want to thank Ivan for chiming in. Sean the Superback for listening. I appreciate that. We just want to leave you with a sense of culture. Okay, Deion Sanders hiring should show that if he is willing to do this, then others should do as well. He made a statement today saying he did this for himself. He already lived on a property that had 100 acres and some mules, but he's doing this to give back. So if more people realize that, then our institutions can flourish like they did in the 1960s, 70s, and early 80s. Chicago, Livingstone College supports you. We will be there in conjunction with SportsZone Chicago. We thank you for your time. And again, please support yourself, your culture, and your heritage. And when you do those things, all around you grows. Thank you for your time tonight, and I will be with you next Wednesday.